Hi, everybody. Happy Friday, October 4th here in New England. And Cooper and I are sitting here because I had a little piece of molten aluminum go into my sock, scalded the inside of my ankle, and it just hurts like a bugger. So we started talking, and a good intro to this. A lot of you are new to Smyth Performance. You probably know me from the car-based truck kits we have. Behind me, I have 2 Chargers and a 300, and we convert and make a kit that converts cars into some of the coolest little pickup trucks you'll ever see. And bang for the buck, by the way, it's aluminum, it's CNC cut, it's fiberglass bodies that make them look great. The entire package is probably, Coop, the coolest, pound for pound, dollar for dollar, one of the coolest projects you can ever do. And that's why we've shipped thousands of Smyth kits over the years, for 10 years now. But I wanted to I wanted to talk about every morning, 8:30 in the morning, I go live on Facebook almost every morning, about 8:30, and I'll go live on Facebook. In the old days, we had 100,000 people watching. Facebook has now removed organic feed, so our broadcast reaches nobody, but I'm still on with my 12 or 15 friends in the morning, and we talk and we riff and we just go over kit cars and projects. Most of these guys do one after the other builds for customers. We have a bunch of individual customers that are just great guys. I have Factory 5 vendors and customers on there as well. Cooper and I were talking lunchtime today, and we're saying a lot of you guys don't know how we got here. Not just the 10 years of Smyth Performance Utes, which you probably know about from ads in Facebook or seeing one at a show or something. But a lot of you might not know kit car history now that I'm the old guy or one of the old guys in this business. I started when I was 28 and in kit cars. I started with cars when I was 15, but we'll save all that stuff for another time. Now, go back, 1991. I was just telling Cooper and Cooper is my number 3 son. William works with us as well, number 4. Brendan and Timmy, number 1 and 2 sons, were here 5 years ago or so. And Katie is my youngest. And so William and Cooper both work here. Coop's been here all the way through COVID for 5 years, Coop?
About 5 years, yeah.
5 years. It's a family farm. And what you need to know about Smyth Performance and our kits has a backstory. And today's email, and we're putting this on YouTube, right, Coop?
Yeah, YouTube.
Okay, so this email, probably already on YouTube by the time they're watching. It's kind of like my live drives in the morning. If you know me, you know I can talk a lot and for a long time. So I'll try to keep it short. But what Cooper and I were talking about at lunch is the story of how we got here. And it isn't just about Smyth Performance. It's a lot to do with Factory 5. I mean, I started Factory 5, before there was an official Factory 5 Racing Inc. Incorporated, in Dartmouth here. There was a young chemist, me, working at Avery Dennison on inks. I was getting a few cool patents and stuff like that. I had a ball mixing inks. It's like being in kindergarten, except you get paid for it, and the U.S. Patent Office gives you a patent every now and then, right? So I got a bunch of patents there. I was into inks. I made an erasable highlighter, really cool stuff, right? Well, go back to 1991. I was my first year in business school. I was getting my MBA. The company was paying for it. Cool. And on the side, I was still a car guy. I drove a Mustang 5-liter convertible in '88, and great dark blue, white interior. Only new car I have ever owned was when I was in my late 20s. It was a Mustang 5.0. And I became obsessed with the fact that this 5.0 aftermarket was exploding. And I just remembered, Coop, as my entrepreneurship project in business school, the Factory 5 business plan.
That's what you thought of it.
Well, I had already thought of doing a car. We were talking about this earlier, so I'm diving into it. But the business plan, actually in my MBA program, when I was getting my master's, was on Factory 5 Racing. Even though there was no Factory 5, there was just an idea in my head, right? The idea became a business plan, and I got a C. And every time I gave a talk at Bentley in years after that about the founding and starting of Factory 5 Racing, that always comes up because the C project turned into a $20 million company. So anyway, that was 1991. 92, I'm getting my MBA, and I'm drawing up the plans for the first, what became Factory 5 Cobra. And back then, I didn't have any money. I was renting an apartment, I wasn't even married yet, and Kim, my wife, we were dating. We'd been dating for a while. We were on our way to getting married, but I was finishing my MBA. I was a chemist at Avery full time, so I went to school at night, And for fun, I drew up this Cobra replica. Now, I remember 1991 and 92, it wasn't as easy as it is today. CNC stuff was just coming out. A lot of stuff was done by hand. And when you design something, I was privy at Avery Dennison to have the old, it wasn't SolidWorks, it was Pro Engineer was the software that we used at Avery Dennison. And it was one of the first 3D modeling software packages. And that's where I learned about DXF drawings and laser cutting and things like that. So that was 91, 92. So I draw up the first Cobra, I buy the tubing, I buy a body from Everett Morrison. I had a few other, I had access later for the final, well, I'll get to that, but had a fiberglass body that was cut in half from Everett Morrison. It was a couple of grand. The only people in the world that sold Cobra bodies, by the way, were Everett Morrison in Florida. I don't know if they're in business anymore, I doubt it.
You credit them with a lot.
Anybody who always asks me, I never said anything while I owned Factory 5 because the Factory 5 body has changed since, but the first Factory 5 in 95, the official kit car that was sold, was based 80% or so on an Everett Morrison set of body panels. And then we modified them pretty severely as the company went on. But come 1992, prototype number 1, which we at Factory 5 called, the first Factory 5 kit, was a finished car for a customer named Bob Lasciuto. And this came up because was contacted by Bob this year about a Smyth Ute. And so Bob, even though I've known him for 32 years now, he bought the first prototype Factory 5. It wasn't Factory 5 at the time. Remember, it was just me in a garage. But he bought my first prototype. And I don't know what I was thinking. I mean, I was a chemist, and I knew a lot about JAGs, E-types, and MGs and stuff like that. But why I thought I could design an entire car, I don't know.
Did you know a lot about bodywork at the time?
I did. I painted cars in high school to put myself getting ready for college. And then through college, every summer I painted paint jobs. I did body work.
Yeah.
Made a ton of money. I was, 19 years old. I was ripping, right? But what became just car skills, for some reason I felt smart enough to build an entire car from scratch. I mean, 4-inch round tube. I looked at a lot of the design of the original 427. I loved them. But making it out of, I had DOM, and I read the key book in my life when it comes to engineering. Remember, I'm a chemist. I'm not a chemical engineer, even though I had that job. I'm a chemist. I'm not a mechanical engineer, even though I did that kind of work in the early Factory 5 days. The book I read was called Engineer to Win, and it was written by Carol Smith. And if you have a chance to get that book, if you younger people especially want to learn about the real practical applications of real engineering, materials, tubing, welding, the reasons why things break in design. If you memorize that book.
Don't they talk about the thread bearing?
Yeah, the roller.
Yeah.
I transfer knowledge that I learned 31 years ago in one book of Carol Smith's. No relation, by the way, Carol Smith. I continually repeat things that I have etched in my brain in that book, like the thread rolling. When you cut threads, it creates a stress razor where you cut the thread, and something like a lug nut on a car. If you ever cut a thread, and tell me how I know, if you ever cut a thread with a tap and die set, it can snap right off because you cut a stress razor into the metal, right? You roll sharp threads into really high strength bolts. You don't cut them. Little things like that. The book is about this thick. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick. And if you memorize that book, you will be one of the best mechanical engineers in the country. I guarantee you. It worked for me. It's the only reason, that book is the only reason there is a Factory 5 racing today. If I didn't have that book, I never could have built a car from scratch. Period. End of story. How they say it, there's a full stop, is how they say it in the business world these days. There's always a buzzword, right? No Dick Smith, another Smith is not related who's a friend, but no Carol Smith writing that book, no Factory 5, no Smyth Performance. Mark Smith remains a chemist and a car enthusiast his whole life. So that's thing one. You said this was going to be short, Coop. Dream on.
Yeah, no chance.
No
we're already at 10 minutes.
So this is how the live drives go, by the way, in the morning. I go about a half an hour. That's my drive to work.
Those of you who are still with us.
Yeah, those of you who are still with us. So early Factory 5, before Factory 5 was officially incorporated, the first car I built, it kept the original K-frame and lower control arm from the Mustang, and I bolted that into a 4-inch Shelby Cobra style frame. And I modified the strut. It was very clever. I always tell people I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I definitely use all of the smarts that I have. Okay, I apply myself very, very high percentage of what I have. So not the smartest guy, but I use what I have, right? And a clever invention I had at the time was a little laser cut bracket that had a tapered ball joint receiver in the top, and I converted the strut body, the actual McPherson strut, I cut because the lower mount I didn't want to weld, and I welded a circular tapered a 1-inch steel piece into the top of it after stripping all the oil and everything out of it. And then we had a control arm into the top of about 8 inches of strut. So I made a double, wishbone suspension out of the Fox body strut front end. Now, if you know cars, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you can read the book and figure it out. So I converted a strut suspension into a double wishbone Cobra suspension. And that was the first clue that we could do a 5-liter Mustang 1 donor. I wanted to use the stock suspension. I wanted to use the stock steering. So I converted the power rack to a manual rack. I just capped it off and made a return line and left a little bit of oil in it. So it actually acted as a really good 15-to-1 steering rack. But I kept everything, even the gauge cluster on the prototype. There's a white plastic gauge backing where the gauges, the one-piece gauge cluster that's in a car today, it had pins on it, and it went into the receiver that was plastic with all the wiring, right? I kept that whole cluster, and I screwed it to the back of the firewall, and then I had regular gauges that pinned into those gauge receptacles, but moved, the cluster was in the middle, and I had the gauges over here, and then I made rings to go over the stock Mustang gauge cluster. I cut the pieces I cut the actual gauges apart from the little flat console, right? I cut the gauges in pieces and made little bezels that I pushed into holes and then held, the old plastic gauge backing that had the dial on it. I screwed that to the back of the dash of the Cobra, and I put a ring on the front to make it look like an old gauge. Stuff like that. I was broke. I had to use everything that was in the Mustang. I didn't have money to buy gauges. You'll laugh. Dude, I'm in business school full-time. I'm working full-time, and I'm designing this car. Dude, there's not much left over here, okay? And my wife wants to get married. A lot going on back in 1992, right? Anyway, finished the first prototype. Bob Lasciuto buys the first prototype. God bless him. I think it was like 15, 16 grand back then. It was a lot of money. But Cobras were really expensive. And the whole premise of Factory 5, well, not Factory 5 at the time, of the prototype, was to make a Cobra with the wrecked Mustang I used was $2 grand. I'll never forget it. I paid Menards Auto in New Hampshire, sold a lot of 5.0 Mustang wrecks. And I bought one for $2 grand. And I had a 5.0 that was working, so I had that to look at, if I needed something. But I pulled the entire drivetrain out, engine, transmission, rear end, suspension, shocks, springs. I took everything out of that car. And I used every single nut and bolt that I could. And so the first 1 donor Cobra replica was born in 1992. Bob Lasciuto buys the first one. The second one was also a K-frame, the full front suspension from the Mustang. And that one went to Sonny Sylvia in New Bedford. And at that point, I had moved from all these different, my sister's garage, a transmission shop in Framingham next to Avery Dennison, and then eventually to a very small shop in the town of South Dartmouth, where Dave joined me out in Massachusetts from California, and we incorporated Factory 5. So I had the second prototype almost done, but we had to sell that one to Sonny Sylvia to pay bills, right? And then when Dave came out, I began work on the first real of the modern design of Factory 5, which was no K-frame in the front. So number 3 was no K-frame in the front, a fully independent front suspension. I still used the strut conversion bracket and the stock lower control arm from the Mustang, but I didn't use the old strut and cut it. We just fabricated with the first laser cut pieces. Remember, the previous cars were literally, the metal was printed out on the computer on paper, and I used the paper pattern to jigsaw cut out the bracket and then weld it onto the frame by hand. No laser cutting, no nothing. When Dave came out, we made the decision wisely to have my buddy, he was up in Avon, can't remember his name. Anyway, it was one of the first laser cut operations was up in Avon, Mass, 1994. We're talking about now, and 94, 95, that time frame. And we incorporated Factory 5 in 95. We launched the kit after only having done the first. We did 3 turnkeys. The blue one was Bob Lasciuto's. The red one was Sonny Silvia's, both Mustang K-frame cars. And then the third one went to Portland, Oregon, as a turnkey. We had to pay our bills, so I'd finish a turnkey. I'd make $5 or $10 grand on the turnkey. That was the first truly independent front suspension, soup to nuts Cobra that became the Factory 5 design. Really, that car, number 3, in 1994, 95, fall and summer, or summer and fall of 95, that car really became the first official Factory 5 design that really carries through to today's car. There's not much difference. We added a few safety things in the 2000s, stuff like that. But so that's the story of the beginning of Factory 5. And then Factory 5 we'll leave for another day. I mean, Factory 5, we'll fast forward, right? We took over the kit car business very quickly. Today's Factory 5 is still here. Factory 5 Smyth Performance and maybe 2 other companies are the only ones even making kit cars nowadays. But for 30 years, after those first 3 years, Factory 5 has been making Cobras, 33 Fords. I'll do another video about the full history from my perspective of Factory 5. But I sold Factory 5 to my brother Dave in 2012. So after that whole, run after the Shelby case, we'll talk about all this stuff another time. But when Ford and Shelby sued us in 2000, 2001, after winning that case, another 10 years go by, great growth, becomes, $10, $20 million company, Factory 5 became. I sold it to Dave in 2012. So Dave now owns 100% of Factory 5. And in 2012, I moved next door. I had a 5-year non-compete, and I decided I was really into diesels. So I did the 50-foot Scarab with twin diesel. Cooper remembers when he was a kid. Fiver was the name of the boat. Probably the coolest boat ever to hit Buzzards Bay, if you ask me. I had twin surface drives in the back, fixed surface drives. I had twin 750-horse C-Tech Italian diesels, turbos this big around, inline 6, 10-liter diesel on each side of that boat. So I pulled 3 454 Chevys out with IOs, drives in the back, and I converted that boat over a span of 2 years to, I had a non-compete. I had nothing else to do. So for 5 years, I couldn't do really anything but VWs and boat stuff, right? So for that 5 years, I did the first, the G3F, which was a mid-engine kit car based on a diesel, which we later discontinued when the trucks took off. So I did after the G3F, I did a Jetta pickup truck, and that's when Smyth Performance really took off. But we started off as a mid-engine kit car company. Smyth Performance did, 07, 08, 09, that time frame. And then sold Factory 5, waited till 17 to do all the rest of the Smyth Performance models, right? Because I had 5 years to wait. But in the agreement of selling Factory 5, I could do the Jetta. So we sold the Jetta, Rutledge Wood put it on his TV show. So fast forward, I sell Factory 5. So 2012, 13, 14, we do the Jetta truck. Mike Gallant joins me, a young guy, a college student out in Michigan. And he stayed with me with a few years. Eric Froh started working with me. We had a great time. We were doing it mostly for fun. Remember, we couldn't really do a lot of sales other than the one Jetta pickup truck, but it did sell. The Jetta pickup, especially the little TDIs back then. I was into diesel.
Still selling.
The Mark IV pickup still sells. Good point. After 10 years, it's still going. So we made, and in that same time frame, we founded Locomotors next door to Factory 5 back in the 07, 08, 09, 10, that time frame. And Locomotors did the Rally Fighter. So my friend and co-founder of Locomotors, Jay Rogers, those of you that follow Smyth Performance know that I'm a co-founder in Hattie Incorporated, the furniture company in St. Pete, Florida. And that is run by Jay Rogers, my good friend and co-founder. The real founder of Hattie is Jay. I consider myself a co-founder because I didn't put in the time and energy that it really takes to start a company. Jay is the founder of Hattie. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure we all call ourselves co-founders, but every company has one driving force that founds the company and does the work to put the time and the passion before anybody else believes in it. There's one person that believes in the product and founds the idea of the company, right? And in Locomotors, it was Jay Rogers. In Hattie, it was Jay Rogers. And so I My brother Dave and I owned Factory 5 at the time, and we invested heavily into locomotors. They did the Rally Fighter. We lent them a bunch of engineers back then. Once again, another story. So hopefully I'm giving you a flavor, right, Coop, of my career now that I'm the old guy. I started, if you're 30 years old, I started just like you. I started dreaming about a really cool car I could have. I had no business designing a car or affording something like that. I wasn't married yet. I had kids coming. I have 5 kids now. All through Factory 5, I had little tiny kids. I had babies. And I don't know what I was thinking, founding a company when you're 30 with kids. But for whatever reason, I just, whether it's my history of my forefathers that helped me out, I would pray, I would get in trouble, and I would say prayers to Smyth inventors past. It's hard, you guys. It's hard to start a company. And you hear it from everybody, but it is just as hard as you read about. And you have to really like it. You have to like the process. You have to enjoy the drama. You have to enjoy being broke sometimes. You have to see that being broke is just a step. I've been rich, I've been poor, I've been rich again. It's hard. And no matter how successful you are as an entrepreneur, you have tasted failure over and over and over again. So that is really, Coop, I covered.
That's where we find.
That's how we started talking lunchtime today.
I think maybe the only thing that you missed was the diesel crisis that made.
Oh God, the VW.
And that made you transition toward the other models after the non-compete was over more because of the fact that the G3F was not. And that's another example of the failure that
we talk about. Yeah, no, Cooper's right.
Something that you can control, just like how COVID wasn't something that we could control. That kind of set us back, and you just kind of
stuff happens.
Yeah,
stuff happens,
and we're still here, and
just barely, but we're still here.
But that's why we find ourselves where we are.
Yeah. So Cooper's point, you guys, that we talk a lot about with William and Cooper and Kim, my wife. It's a family farm here. There's no non-family people here. We used to have a lot, but COVID. A lot of people took off during COVID, never came back. More power to them. Free country, right? But we remained. Cooper remained. Timmy helped. He was building a surfboard company. He was here helping us. We've had a family effort. I've never been more grateful for having 5 wonderful children as during COVID, right? We saved ourselves during COVID. But what Cooper's mentioning is right when we ended the non-compete, by 2017, and we launched the new Jetta, the Charger, the VW Beetle. We've launched all these great models, since then. But the challenge is, right as I had positioned the G3F as a green, save the world mid-engine sports car with a 200 horse, 4-cylinder.
Go fast.
Yeah, go green, go fast was the theme, right? VW shoots themselves in the face with the diesel crisis and the cheating scandal, and you guys all remember that. So diesels became something where I'm running biodiesel in a 50-foot, 1,500 horsepower cigarette boat because I'm thinking I'm the green guy, right? And then VW shoots themselves in the face business-wise and loses $20 billion and literally makes diesels public enemy number 1. And I had based the entire Smyth Performance future on a diesel mid-engine sports car, circa 2007, 8, 9, whatever that, And then right after that, the diesel crisis or financial crisis hits first.
That was
Factory 5 almost goes under. I hadn't sold Factory 5 yet, right? Factory 5 almost goes under during the financial crisis. I got the bank. We had never missed a payment at Factory 5. We almost lose the building. Okay. We had Shelby sues us in 2000. The financial crisis hits in 08, 09. Factory 5 took some hits, you guys. We have the diesel crisis where diesels are now enemy cars. I had invested.
Once you switched over to.
Once I went over and we got rid of Factory 5, sold it, did all that. I invested in all this diesel, G3Fs, the diesel Jetta. That's our heart and soul, right? Well, diesels are no good anymore. VW ruins it. Dude, you got it. It's not your fault, but you're failing. Nobody wants to buy a diesel truck because diesels are now the enemy, right? Got to reinvent myself. I got to push hard on the gasoline-powered cars. I got to do the Charger. Hemi Charger. What? I'm going to reinvent myself. I'm going to go back to my basics. I'm going to go back to muscle cars, Cobras, Hemis, Ford Performance, Chrysler Performance, whatever it takes to sell Utes and survive, right? I got a business. I have people working for me. We pull it off. We pull off the financial crisis at Factory 5. We pull off the diesel crisis here. One thing after another. The financial crisis, diesel crisis. It just kept coming. And then COVID hits, right? 2019. COVID-19, late 19. and we almost lost it all over again. And each time we've had to reinvent ourselves. We had to change. And now, we were talking about demographics, right? And the changes. Cooper and I were talking about how the culture in the United States has changed again. A lot of people who used to build cars are now in their 80s and 90s. So that segment is not doing cars anymore. People want appliances, not cars. Not us, we're car guys, right? You watching this are a car guy and gal. But most of our society wants a refrigerator kind of a car, an appliance, a dishwasher that you press the button and go, you know. Most people today can't, 2 or 3% of the American public knows how to drive a manual transmission today. Think about that. 2 or 3% know how to drive a manual. I'll bet 80% of the people watching this know how to drive a manual. We're enthusiasts. We build cars for fun. Smyth Utes are one of the only cars in the world that you can build yourself, be unique, and drive every day. You've got airbags, you've got fuel injection, you've got fuel economy. Every of the modern cars work every day, but it's not an appliance. It's got soul. It's a forever car. You build one of these cars, you're special, you drive it every day, and you'll never get rid of it unless you choose to sell it. And you usually sell it for a good amount of money. But that leads us to our current transition, which is as the world changes and the cost to reach everyone becomes thousands and thousands of dollars a week, we had to make the call. We're saying, look, I'm not going to chase Facebook with ads. I'm going to do finished cars for very special people. I'm going to do kits for builders of these special cars for special people, for fantastic customers that understand what it's like to drive something unique, right? I'm going to build the kits, sell them to builders, and I'm going to phase out of the retail sales of kits one by one in 2025. So January, 3 months from now, there's still time. I've been saying this all summer long. January, we're going to not sell one-on-one kits to the general public. And it hurts because those customers are what put us where we are. But pricing power is not what the kit needs to be. $6 or $7 grand to make money. I'm selling them for $4 grand. I already promised people that I would continue selling them for $4 grand through the end of the year. I'm not going to suddenly go to $7 grand. You know, I promised people they're planning their projects. Anyone who is planning a project or thinking about it, even if you're new, you've got till the end of the year. You've got time, you know, to buy one of these kits. We're out to December. We have a lot of slots in December left. It's not there's no huge crisis. We're a small company. We don't sell 10 a day. You know, it's not. Yeah. It's just 4 of us here. But we are transitioning and loving the new dynamic, and the live drives I brought up at the beginning are part of it. I'm loving the dynamic of having these conversations with people that are building 2, 3. Remember, I have bundles available that are 2 for $7 grand. 2 kits for $7 grand. Each kit should be $7 grand alone. 2 of them for $7 grand. 3 of them for $9 grand. $3 grand a kit. When I do a bundle of 4, 5, 6 kits at a time in the shop, I can do them even though the bundles are sold at cost in order to grow the builder network for right now. I'm telling anyone who buys a bundle that they can have that pricing all next year. So even if prices go absolutely crazy, I'm going to be very close to the existing prices right now, if not the same, all next year. Inflation be damned. And that loyalty I'm buying by giving these cars at amazing prices to our builder network and to our builder network only.
Who, by the way, it's not professional shops. It's
good
anyone.
Point. Cooper's right. Anybody who buys 2 of these kits you're on my radar. You can do 1 kit every 2 years if you want. I don't care. But anybody who buys a bundle of 2 kits or 3 is an official builder for Smyth Performance.
There was a guy.
You can do it with your buddy, right? I mean, you can do it with your neighbor, and you're a builder. You have access to product forever, basically, right?
There was a guy who had bought one, but maybe 8 years ago, and he asked questions. He was going to check out with another one. And he asked if he was going to be a builder, and we said, "Hell yeah, you are."
No, that's it. We just had this conversation.
Any combination of that too.
So one of my earlier customers from 8 years ago, it was Jetta guy, built a car. I mean, you know, remember, I have to get used to this because remember, I used to be a young guy, and when you get old, you guys and gals, you still think of yourself as a 30-year-old. You know what I mean? I tell this to my 30-year-old kids all the time. You feel the same when you're 62 years old like me that you did when you were 30, as long as you're healthy. And it's hard for me to realize that I've been doing this for 32 years. The kit car business for 32 years. Cars for another 10 or 15 before that, right? It has become my life as far as what my life's work is. Starting these little companies is really fun, with the exception of Hattie with the furniture, which is just amazing, but we'll talk about that another time. Builders are anybody. Joe and Dan, who are in the same town or 5 towns away and related, brother-in-law, whatever, if you do one with your buddy, you're grandfathered in. It's kind of a cool way to buy people's support, right? I'm building quite a network of builders, so that when somebody calls me for a Charger Ute, and they want to drop 30 grand on a really nice build, I have people I can call near them within a few hours anyway, and I can say, hey, Don, can you build this guy a Charger? I'm going to give you his number. And the guy calls the builder. I do a handful of finished cars here, but I'm going to be focusing on YouTube content. And, I've said this several times. My friends, Emily and Aaron Reeves, or DeBosch Garage, Rich at DeBosch Garage, who I've only met once, but I just love. Tavares, Freddie, Jared Pink, the awesome Jared Pink. These people who are on YouTube all tell me the same thing that Cooper tells me. YouTube is where your exposure lies in the future. It's not Facebook. Facebook might be great to have a Facebook Marketplace ad, to pop up, which you might have seen for Smyth Performance. But the future of accessing customers, this video, if done on Facebook Live, would get 15 views live, and then maybe 1,000 people would see it during the day. I've got 130,000, 120,000 fans or whatever on Facebook, another 30,000 on Instagram, same company, right? And I reach 15, 20, maybe 1,000 people that first day. It's gone. So if you're in business like me and you sell directly to consumers, or you count on your reach, write Facebook off, do ads, but write it off and double down on YouTube. It's just the way it is. And it's kind of what we're doing now. This video won't get a ton of views. We're going to send it out to our tens of thousands of people on our email list. But I mean, how many people are really going to watch this to the end? It's kind of like my live drives. How many minutes have we been going?
It's about 32 minutes exactly.
I'm going to end right now because this is how long the live drives are in the morning. It takes me 30 minutes to get to work. I hit play when I leave my driveway, oftentimes, and I've got a few dead zones where the video actually goes off for 10 seconds or so, and I come back. It's kind of fun. So if you're into this stuff and you want to know the background, I tell these stories just like I did today. I tell these stories with a mount in my car. I can't look at the camera, obviously, and I just talk about a life of kit cars, Cobras. I mean, I'll do another one of these talking about the first, 60s, 70s, and 80s kit cars, and then I can talk about, the 90s Cobra revolution, if you will, when Steve Arntz, launched the first.
Comment on YouTube.
I mean, I can do another one of these where we talk about, instead of this, we'll call this part one, which is from 1992 to present, right? Smyth Performance took over the Cobra market with Factory 5. And that is the story of the kit car market after 1995.
And since this will be on YouTube, they can also comment and say what they want.
Yeah, throw in, if you guys, especially you older guys that remember these kit cars from 95 on, this segment's going to be part one, basically, of kit car history, even though I didn't go into all the details of Factory 5. We can add, another video group that says, 95 to present kit cars, again, kind of a thing, more background or something. So as I nurse my burning ankle from a ball of aluminum that was molten, still hurts like a bugger. You get the picture, right? I'm still TIG welding. I'm running the press brake. Cooper works like a dog. William works like a dog. We left behind this cool SRT8 Ute and the white all-wheel drive Ute behind me here, the Charger. We've got a whole molding department back there. I've got a 5x10 CNC machine, high-definition plasma in the back. We've got a 100-ton press brake from 1945 sitting over there. It's a real factory. There's just only 4 of us. And so when we say we're getting smaller but better, that's exactly what we're doing. We're going to turn this company into a really, really it's already well known, but an even more widely known brand, because we're going to start doing, we'll always do the regular shop truck kind of cars, right? But we're going to be doing more. The market is demanding more Hellcat Utes for 70 grand, right? The market wants a Scat Pack Ute. The market wants a Beetle convertible Ute. The market wants a Land Rover Ute, right? We're going to become Cooper and William are going to run this show with Kim. I'm going to be the old guy out back doing the new cars like the Land Rover. It's going to be a bloody ball, and we're excited for the change. The only casualty in this was the direct to retail consumer, which unfortunately the world has conspired against you. We can't afford to reach you, and we can't afford to do one at a time at the price point you're willing to pay. If people are willing to pay $7,000, I theoretically could do that. But you're not going to see a $4,000 kit car ever again. I remember at one time we were $3,500 here when we launched 10 years ago.
$2,990 with the Beetle.
Just adding inflation from 10 years ago, the kit has to be $4,500, $4,600, okay? And here they are, $4,000. There's no way for us to keep up price-wise. The world is changing. We're bowing out of the retail business. And I'm actually selling these things for even less than that in bulk. So if I do 3 at a time, bring it. I'm all over it. I can eventually, line of sight, I can make plenty of money to survive here and pay my bills if I'm doing bulk sales of Jettas, Mark 6 Jettas, Mark 5 Jettas, Mark 4 Jettas, Beetles, Chargers, 300s, Land Rovers. I mean, we can make money if we ship more than 2 or 3 at a time to the same customers over and over. I don't get tech support calls even, believe it or not. These guys already built a car, right? So it is an exciting change here. I have that pang of sorrow about the retail business, but you got to change with the times. If people aren't able or willing to pay what something is worth, you kill it. It sounds harsh, but that's the world. You can't be in this as a charity, and I never have been, but for the last 10 years, I kind of have been. My sale of Factory 5 has funded an awful lot of investment into this company where I didn't have to make all the money here, right? And those days, that was a long time ago now. This company has to make it on its own, and it will. And we'll make this a thriving brand that you will be proud of when you build one, that builders will be proud of selling to their customers. And when you show up at a car show, and you're in a Smyth Charger or Beetle or something like that, you're going to be a rock star for $20,000, man. It's my favorite part of this business, is a turnkey Beetle Ute or a Charger Ute, a basic car, nothing crazy. $5,000, $10,000 donor, $10,000 build, less than the price of a Toyota Tercel. You just can't. There's nothing better in my mind. And I've owned almost every car on the planet. I always tell people, I'm going to do a video, Coop, of home, the 1/18 scale models and everything. I'm going to do a video of my model collection because each 1/18 scale model I've owned. And I've got like 20 of them on the wall. And they're all really cool. And I'll do one of those videos one of these times. Today's video was kind of, what is the live drive in the morning? I told you about that. What is my background to you new guys? We talked about that. And where we're headed at Smyth Performance. So now you've got it. In one video, you've got the past, you got the medium past of changes, and you've got our future plans laid out in front of you. You retail customers, you still have time. We're shipping them for another 3 months. And if you want to buy one, you go to smythkitcars.com. Check it out. Use a firm if you want. You want to finance the thing. It's, for God's sakes, it's 24 months, 0% now. So many different ways to make this work for you. And then in January, we start this new phase of the business, focusing on repeat builders and having more fun in this business. That's all I have, Coop. Anything I missed?
I don't think so.
Well, I missed a lot. But in this video...
Yeah, you did a good job capturing where we're at right now.
All right. So from Tiverton, Rhode Island, Cooper, we're solo today. Kim is working outside of the office. William is down in South Carolina judging a surfing competition. He deserved a break, and he's down there. So from Tiverton, Rhode Island, from Cooper Smith and Mark Smith, signing off. Hope to see you in the mornings on a live drive sometime. Take care.